Alright, so my IT guys know why we're here. Hospital guys probably a bit lost at the moment. Okay, this is Gary Burrows, he's from the CEO. He's the sustainability officer for the CEO. So he's in charge of looking at how to make the CEO more environmentally friendly, more efficient with our resources. Okay, basically I brought him down today because in IT we're doing an assignment on sustainability, and you guys at hospital need to do one next year. Okay, so I thought it'd be a really good chance to get him down and talk about how the CEO is going, the state of what we're doing, and issues related to this on a national and a world scale. Okay, so hospital guys need to listen and remember the ideas till next year. Okay, my guys, this assignment's due the end of the term, so we need to focus on what we're doing here now. Okay, so there you go.
Thanks, Mr. Wells. Afternoon, gentlemen.
Afternoon.
Mr. Wells and yourselves, certainly the guys in Mr. Wells' class, developed a number of questions that you wanted me to answer for you. As a sustainability officer, my job at CEO is to try and make us more carbon neutral than we are. Carbon neutral is something we'll talk about later on. But essentially, what we want to do with sustainability is reduce our costs as a business. Education is a business. What you guys are training for are businesses. What was the topic of the assessment task that Mr. Wells gave his class? Look it up, tell me. It's in the top right-hand corner of the assessment task. When you got it, read it out for us.
Implement and monitor environmentally sustainable work practices.
Okay. Why would you guys going to work somewhere at some time have to implement and monitor environment sustainable practices?
To ensure the way you're working is most efficient
For whose benefit?
for yours and the company's.
Well, how could it be for your benefit?
So you might have to buy materials and stuff, so that means that you have to spend less money.
Okay, so at the moment, you're looking at it from a perspective as you as a worker and you working for a boss.
Isn't it like a HMS or code of conduct or something?
No, but it very soon will be. Good question. And OH&S is gone. It's now called WH&S, Workplace Health and Safety, directly connected to your assessment task. So at the moment, the reason that you're doing this is to save money, as this young man just said. To go and buy timber or toilet tools or something, save money. But you're going to save money for the boss. Saving money is the bottom reason as to why we should be more sustainable. But that's where we're going to start. Now, in those series of questions you sent me, I've got them reorganised here as these questions here. And you can see what is the internet bill for the school per month. I can't answer that. I don't have access to your bills. Mr. Colleen does, but I don't have access to those things. So CEO, where I work, as an overarching employer of all the school's principals and staff, etc., we don't actually monitor every school's electricity bills. And all the questions that you've got in that are in pink here, I put to Mr. Wells and suggested that you get hold of the bills at the school. And if you want to, when you get hold of those bills, Mr. Wells, let me know, I'll come back and I'll show you how to unpack them. Electricity bills are really, really hard to understand. And they're made that way on purpose by the electricity companies so that us dummies won't ask some nasty questions. Like how much carbon tax are each of us paying and where's it going to at the moment. So I can answer those questions, not in blue, but I can answer the questions that I had down here. So the first one was, what happens to old equipment if they can't be used anymore? Good question. There are a number of recyclers around. You often see trucks going around recycling old fridges and washing machines. Remember the cleanups we used to have in neighbourhoods? Everybody put their rubbish out, and all day long there'd be people driving up and down the street collecting stuff that was worthwhile. The best recyclers in the world, because half those guys collected metal, and what do you think they did with the metal? They took it to the metal scrappers and sold it. Where did that metal go once it got to the scrappers yard? To a recycling plant, which did what with it? Melted it down and it became reused steel. Exactly. Recycling is very, very common. But there are only 2 plants in the whole of New South Wales that recycle these things. these tubes. And I think there's a question further down about the tubes. Somebody asked a question about the tubes. Can anybody remember who that was that asked about the tubes? The question was, can they be recycled because they've got something harmful in them? What have they got in them?
Mercury.
And what does mercury do to us? Poisons us. And yet, as children, probably not you guys, but certainly me as a child, we had mercury stuck in our mouths to gauge the temperature. If we'd bitten on that mercury bowl, that would have poisoned us. Real smart move. There are only 2 recycling plants in the whole of New South Wales that take one of those things, evacuate the mercury, suck the mercury out, collect it, sealed, and they've got to take it to a government place for that, a CSIRO place. They then take the metal off the end, scrap it, goes to a metal yard, and then they take the glass and crush it, and they have to send it to Victoria and to have new glass made out of it. 2 recyclers in the whole of New South Wales. So yes, there are recycling going on, a lot of it, but there's not a lot that are really quite good at it. Are MacBooks recyclable? Who asked that question? Answer, very good question, yes. And so are PCs. And at Sydney CEO, we've got contacts, and if Mr. Colleen rings me up and says, who's your contact for computers that can recycle? I give him a phone number. That guy sends a truck out, collects all the computers and the old monitors and the old screens that you have around the place, takes them away, takes them to the Central Coast actually, where he's got a sheltered workshop. People with mental disabilities work in the sheltered workshop. They recycle, and then he sends a report back to the school with what percentage has been recycled. And in every report I've ever seen, it's more than 93% is recycled. So we have a policy at CEO Sydney which says if you've got to principals and executive staff, if you've got computers, monitors that you need recycled, 1 phone number to ring. So a lot's being done. And by the way, who's got a Mac at home? Who's about to recycle a Mac? I'm just about to get a new MacBook Pro, so this one I've got at home will go. 96% of it is recyclable. Where do I take it to? Any Apple store. They don't advertise it a lot, but if you ask the direct question, they will take it back from you. They won't give you a trading price for it. They'll take it back and they'll recycle 96% of it. They're the highest percentage recyclers that we've got at the moment. Questions about that? Does the school invest in energy efficient products? Yes, it does. Some of you might have seen my ugly face around here a little bit lately. I've been wandering around looking at these lights. Probably see me wandering around sometimes with a phone up looking at the lights. I'll tell you what that's about in a minute. And I've been looking at where we're putting a solar array in your school. It's going over the top of the Year 8 building, back of the Year 8 building. There's an array going in there. It's an 8.36 kilowatt array. And the way you work out how useful that is some maths for you. There's about 5 hours of sunlight that hits a panel. You know what a solar panel looks like? It sits on a roof at about 30 degrees facing north. The sun goes up in the east and down in the west. For only 5 hours, from about 10 a.m. to 3 p.m, can that collect electricity out of the sun. In winter, what happens to the sun in winter? It's lower in the sky. So it's only from about 10:30 till 2:30 that it collects power, 4 hours. So you multiply that number, 8.36, which is up there, by 4. Quickly, 8.3 is by 4. Who are the maths geniuses?
33.44.
Did you do that on the computer?
Yeah.
That's all right. You're allowed to do that. 33 kilowatt hours of electricity. One of the things I want you to look for, take a note please, when you look at the school's electricity account, which will be 4 pages long, somewhere buried in it somewhere will say what the school uses, kWh, kilowatt hour, per day. My guess, a school like this is between 400 and 600 kilowatt hours. The solar system that we're putting on is only worth 33 of those. Let's make it 400 hours, kilowatt hours. What's 33 as a percentage of 400? 33 divide 400 multiplied by 101. 33 divide 400 multiplied by 101. 8%. 8% of the power in the school, if it uses 400 kilowatt hours a day, is going to come out of that array. So that's 8% Mr. Colleen will not have to pay for. Why did we put a bigger machine in the system on? Because you didn't have enough money. That doesn't mean you won't have in the future. And the other thing was, as well as putting an 8.36 kilowatt system on, we're changing out every single one of these tubes. So very soon you'll come into this room and you'll look at that tube there and see how thick it is. If you took a ruler up and measure across it, diameter-wise, it's 8 millimetres.
So they've already done that. This room's not getting done because we're knocking off the whole block at the end of the year.
Correct. Sorry, I forgot all about this. So if you go to other rooms, you'll find if you look up, they're actually very thin. They're 5 millimetres. The difference is that tube there is pulling 40 watts out of power every tube. The 5 millimetre tube pulls 22 watts. Percentage question again, get your calculators ready. What's 22 as a percentage of 40? 22 divide 40?
50.
Just a little bit. 55%. So what that's saying is the new tubes, have you seen the new tubes in the other parts of the school? The really thin
No, you
ones?
can't because the lights application on it.
But what they are using 45% less electricity, and they're giving the same light. So we've replaced 1,100 of those lights in the school. That immediately means 45% off the cost of electricity. Now I won't go any further than that until you look at the bill. Questions about that?
What's the difference in price between the loads?
At the moment,
It's not, I think it's 26 cents for the kilowatt or something.
to go and buy, one of those you can't buy anymore. You can't source them because the whole of New South Wales is getting rid of them. But they would have been about $2 a tube. The new ones are $5 a tube. How many schools have we done that in? That's a question that comes further down. Are light bulbs recyclable? I told you about what we do about the light bulbs. How many recyclers in New South Wales are there? Two. So when we did this program in your school and replaced those 1,169 lights, we wrote into the contract that the person that replaced them had to take the old ones to one of those recycling plants. I didn't go out and check that they did. I assumed they honoured the contract. I didn't go and check the recycler to assume that he put every one of those tubes one at a time through the machine that evacuated the mercury and did everything else. But the state government, if they catch them not doing it, fines them hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they're pretty silly if they don't. Are light bulbs efficient? I've just told you that one. They're called T's. T12s are really big, thick ones. They're about that thick. They used to pull about 50 watts each light. The T8s that you've got in this room are pulling 40. The T5s that you see in other rooms are pulling 22. The next step is LEDs. What does that mean, LEDs? Light emitting diodes. Little tiny beams of light. If you go to the picture theatre and you're walking across the floor of the picture theatres before you go into the picture, you often see lights on the floor, tiny little lights. The new cars, the Audis and the V-dubs and things have got them around the front, little diodes. They take out one of those tubes and they put 52 little diodes down one side and 52 up the other side. And they put them in there and they put them on and away they go. And maybe one or two will blow out a month, so maybe 3 will blow out a year. They reckon the lights will last 15,000 hours of use, which is longer than I'll be alive. But they're about $60 a tube. They're pretty expensive. But Audi's using them, VW's using them, and very soon, in fact, I know for sure the Commodores have just gone into using them. So they're coming in. Who got driven to school today?
By a bus.
By whatever. You stopped at a set of lights, red, yellow and green.
Yeah.
They're LEDs. Have a good close look at them. You can see the thin points of lights in them.
Yeah.
They're coming in all over the world. We're using them all over the place. They use them at the moment for Christmas decorations because they're cheaper. And they are running at about as low as 5 watts a go. So the old T12 things, real big thick things, 50 watts. LEDs, 5 watts. Massive, massive different savings. How much does an air conditioner cost compared to a fan? Well, I think the easy answer is the air conditioners for 6 months usage is about $450 to $500. So a year, about $900. Now, how did I gauge that? Air conditioning at my house. I look at it when it's on, what the bill is, and when it's off, what the bill is. It's about $900 a year for an air conditioner. It's about $4 a year for a fan. What's the difference between an air conditioner and a fan, mechanically?
So it's more power, heat,
Nice and loud?
Heat.
Again?
Heat.
Heat. The fan doesn't put out any heat. To produce heat in something like a toaster or a kettle or an air conditioner takes a minimum 2,400 watts. The fan will be driven on 5 watts. The air conditioner, as soon as you flick it on, is pulling 2,400 watts every hour. The short answer is heat is the enemy. Anything that's producing heat is costing you an absolute fortune.
How much energy does the big fan use?
I was responsible for getting that fan put in. Excuse the French, but it's called a big-assed fan. That's what it's actually called. You look it up, you find it that.
You can see it written on the side though.
That fan itself doesn't use a lot of power at all because we checked into that, but its efficiency rate is well and truly worth whatever it costs to put in. To turn the fan, probably might be pulling about 10, 12 watts to start with because it's much bigger than these. And then there are 4 fans on the side, directing air into it, which takes it around and directs it out the back doors. So it's really, because it's not producing any heat, the most efficient we can use at the moment. Other questions? Let me keep going. What does the school need to improve in an environmentally friendly way? The bottom line is managing consumables. What do they mean by consumables? Things that we consume, namely electricity, what else? Water, food, clothes. Somebody asked about desks, chairs, plastic. So it is about managing those consumables. There is a plan that the governments have in place all over the world, and they list 5 consumables, and the topics are energy, and that's the easy one to manage. We're managing it right now. How?
Well, it's getting the new lights.
And what are we doing right now that we normally wouldn't do? Turn the lights off. The lights are off. I don't need the lights on, you don't need them on, so why use them? We're actually managing them. Waste recycling. The old method of waste recycling was a truck came in, picked up the big bin, tossed it in the back, put it down and drove off. But nobody ever checked that the bin was full. We were being charged at schools for 2 pickups a week, costing $40. The truck came in. The problem was that half the bins were mostly air. We were paying to dump air. We've now changed that policy. The policy now is we pick up when the bins are full, whether it's twice a week, 3 times a week, or once every 2 weeks. We pay by weight of bin, not by when it's due to be picked up. Get the difference? A little thing like that has saved the system hundreds of thousands of dollars. Water usage. Water's not producing a carbon footprint by itself, but its use is. It takes something like 20 litres of water, to 50 litres of water actually, to produce a kilo of fresh meat. We waste 50 litres of water to produce a kilo of fresh meat. So there is a carbon footprint attached to water. The other thing is that we've done some measuring on. When you go to the toilet and flush the toilet, if it's water straight off the system, 40% of the water the school buys gets flushed every day. 40%. Ouch. So that's why we put in water tanks a couple of years ago. First thing you do with a water tank, connect it to the toilets. Flush with water that was in the tank, it's not costing you a cent. Make sense? Biodiversity means gardens, grounds, gardens. The sort of grass that we're putting in these days. What type of, anybody know their grasses? Cooch, bent, buffalo? One that leaves less water. Anybody know what it is?
Oh, the dry ones.
Buffalo. Buffalo. So we're putting in buffalo grasses when we do renovations in schools. Or in primary schools, we put in the imitation grass. Kids scream when they trip on it and skin their knees, but at least the grass looks good. Consumer goods. When we buy product at schools, we refuse to take it in packaging. Stupid thing that I asked the other day at Harvey Norman, I bought a new TV, and you know they come in big boxes. I took it to the car and the guy helped me carry it out, and I said, hold on a minute. I split the box, pulled the TV out of the box, laid the TV very gently across the back seat, gave him the box back. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm refusing the box. He said, you can't do that. I said, I just did. He said, but what do I do with it? I said, you recycle it. It's your job. It's the job of who provides the package item to you to take the packaging. So now, when you get a fridge delivered at home and it comes in all this packaging and polystyrene and everything, they have to take it back and recycle it appropriately. So it's something to think about at home. If you're getting something new like a fridge and the guy doesn't take the fridge, say, hold on mate, you've got to take all the plastic and the polystyrene and the cardboard and take it with you. It's legislation, it's law. But who knew that? I didn't know it until I found out about it. And so these guys are dumping all this stuff on us and we just have to recycle it somewhere in our recycling bins. No, by law, they've got to take it away, take it back. So when we buy at schools, we buy monitors, we buy them by the dozen. In this case, at the moment, I've just organised an order of 4,000 Xerox photocopiers for any one of our schools who wants to buy them. They're coming in unpackaged. They'll be unpackaged in the school and the package will go back out. So it's one of those things we have to worry about. We don't have to pay for it and they're rubbish. We don't have to take it home and do anything with it. It belongs to the manufacturer. So you notice some manufacturers now are starting to send things out in very small packages. When you buy an Apple computer, who's bought an Apple recently? What did it come in? The handbag case. But inside it'd have polystyrene and stuff.
I've got one on my desk.
Whereas 4 years ago, when you bought them, they all came with polystyrene all around them, packaged, and they had little bits and pieces everywhere. Today they come in a little package, which you can use as a carry bag. Smart. They're cutting out a lot of packaging. So they're the 5 areas that the world is looking at in a big way. Yep. Now there is some polystyrene in here, but not much. In fact, there's only a little plastic tray in there. Cardboard, felt, cardboard, plastic tray. Almost nothing has to be recycled. And you know what? If you give that back to MacBook Pro, the Mac Apple store, they'll love you for it because it's one less they have to get out next time. Just take your MacBook home. Strategies or plans to make schools more efficient. There are a lot of things going on. I've just mentioned the photocopies to you. We have just purchased 4,000 photocopies. I don't mean we've bought 4,000 machines. We've agreed to buy as many as. So when our schools start ordering, we will do a big order. Everybody will order at once, and in about May, we'll start delivering all those photocopies to schools. That's what the system is doing for schools. That's what the office is doing for schools. One thing. I talked about the solar arrays, and I talked about the lighting regroup in your school. Your school was one of 88 schools that got the funding from government to put in solar arrays and redo your lighting. Now there's a program called the STC account that state government pays us 45% of the costs of putting those lights in. So whatever your school was going to cost, let's say for argument's sake it was 20 grand to put the lights in, they paid 8 grand. The government paid the other 12 grand of that job for us. So we're going big time with solar arrays. The biggest solar array I've put in recently was at Killip College down at Wakely. Been down there recently? Seen the big solar array on their library? 29 kilowatts. Do you remember how to work out how big it is? What do you multiply by a factor of? How many hours a day does it get?
5 hours.
But on average it gets 4, so multiply 29, multiply 30 by 4. 120. 120 kilowatt hours a day. Now that school I know is using 400 kilowatt hours a day. What percentage is 120 of 400?
25.
Yep. 25%. So a quarter of their power they no longer buy. That system's producing a quarter of their power. That's one thing we're doing at a major sites. In fact, as you can see on this line here, 95 schools got the funding from government, 88 put in solar. Now if you just look at the solar, that's worth $6 million in funds alone we got from government for that. 6 million in 4 years. 2 million kilowatt hours we are producing. There's a kWh, kilowatt hours. We're producing 2 million. That's saving us about $200,000 a year in energy we don't buy. Multiply that by 25 years, those things will work for. $50 million in 25 years. And more importantly, the carbon dioxide output of electricity has been reduced by 1,000 tonnes. Now to put it in perspective, we reckon our footprint, our carbon footprint, we've done a quick measurement of it, is 21 kilotons. That is 1.1 kilotons. So we've reduced 1.1 of the 21 kilotons. We're down to 20 kilotons of our carbon footprint as an organisation. And when the federal government brought in the carbon tax, they were going to charge that to anybody over 25 kilotons. So we didn't have to pay carbon tax. So that's big picture item stuff that we're doing. I go around schools running an energy efficiency program. I teach staff and students how to be energy efficient. And the first thing I teach them is what I did when I walked in the room. Turn off the lights. The lights are there for good reason. When you need them, use them. Learn to when you don't need them. Because lighting is about 30% of the energy bill this school goes through. The other part of the bill that's very expensive is air conditioning. Out in Fairfield, in the middle of summer, you need air conditioning. So use it. But when I walked into this room, the air conditioning was going. The way to solve that is to air condition during the lesson. When you leave, shut the doors, turn the air conditioner off. The cool air stays trapped. When you come back in, turn it back on again. And those things are worth dollars to the school. So I teach energy efficiency programs. I teach schools to develop what's called a SEP, a School Environment Management Plan. And out of that we develop environment committees, and we do a lot of work on things like gardens and managing electricity. Recycling old lights and old computers I told you about. But what I'm going to show you now is a quiz on some more important stuff. Before I go to that quiz, any questions about what I've had to talk about so far? Okay. Let me pull the quiz up, and then I'll come back to this presentation. You've been looking at this at your level, at your school level. You've thought about it at your future work level. It's going to have an impact on your future work, whatever job you decide to move into. And they reckon these days that every one of you can expect to change careers how many times in a lifetime? 4 times average. 4 times average. And no matter where you go, sustainability will be part of the role. So much so that even these days at university level, at TAFE colleges, there are careers developed in sustainability. How much does it cost to fill a glass of water?
0.0002.
Yep. So in terms of dollars and cents, how much is that? 0.2 of a cent. 0.2 of a cent. How many of you bought bottled water recently?
Oh, I didn't buy it. For 30.
What did you pay for it?
$2.
Smart. But if you bought a bottled water, what do you pay for it?
$3.
On average, $2. What relationship is $2 to 0.2 of a cent? 0.2 of a cent
Multiplied by 1,000.
multiplied by 1,000. So it's 1,000 times more expensive to buy bottled water than it is to buy and fill up a glass of water. The water is actually better for you coming out of the taps. Why?
Right, it's fresh.
Well, fresh, but it's got fluoride in it. The bottled water hasn't got fluoride in it. And your generation that have been drinking bottled water for about 3 or 4 years are starting to present to dentists with lots of holes in your teeth because you haven't had the fluoride through the water we've had in our tap system for generations.
Isn't that through non-filtered water?
True, it's through non-filtered water. But how do you know the bottled water you buy's got fluoride in it? You don't. You'd have to test it to know. And a lot of it coming straight through that is filtered has the fluoride taken out of it. So it's causing some major teeth problems. And you're paying how much more per bottle than glass? 1,000 times more. Now there's nothing wrong with doing what this guy said he did. You keep the same bottle and fill it up, tap. Perfect, perfect. But unfortunately, most of the world doesn't do that, as you can see from those photos.
So what's the difference between filtered and
The fluoride. We need it for teeth. We need it untreated. That's an American statistic. It's about 6 years old. Just let me explain what the photo is. It's a photo taken from an aeroplane. It's taken from an area of the ocean in the middle between where Japan is and where South America is on the other side. South America is over there, Japan's there as you look at me. The middle ocean between them, there's an area of the middle of the ocean bigger than New South Wales. It is over 2 metres deep and it is full of plastic. It's called a gyre, Gyre. What happens is that all the rubbish comes off the land, and particularly with the Japanese tsunami 2 years ago, all the plastic, and it circles through all the oceans, eddying currents, etc., and ends up in the middle of the ocean between South America and Japan. And it's called a gyre. Now, a colleague of mine is a sailor and sailed through it. It took him 3 days to get through it, but he said it was terrifying. And that gyre is one of 6 in the oceans of the world at the moment, full of plastic. How do we know that's causing problems? Because we're catching fish with them who have suffocated on the plastic. And what is 23% of our food source for the world? Fish. So we are destroying part of 23% of our food supply, plastic, that doesn't degenerate in the ocean. That's terrifying. So think about that plastic bottle of water you keep buying. Keep the plastic bottle and just keep filling it up. Question about waste. Read through it and decide whether you would answer A, B, C or D to that one. This is Australian only. And it's 3 years old.
Sorry, sir. With the plastic bottles, aren't they used for recycling?
We put them in the bins, the recycling bins, hoping they will be, but often at the other end it isn't being done properly. About 7 years ago, every school was recycling massive amounts of paper. We'd have paper trucks coming in, taking it away. The recycling plants for paper were so overfull, they had to take the paper out and dump it straight into the rubbish. Paper degenerates quite quickly. Plastic just sits in the ground until it leaches through and ends up in the oceans. Plastic takes hundreds of years to generate properly. Although the new plastic that we're making generates much more quickly. Who's got a plastic bottle? Crush it. Press it. This one's quite elastic.
The new Mount Franklin ones.
The ones that fracture when you do that are leaching a poison called BPA. Poison called BPA is being leached into the water. It's produced by the constant cooling and heating of the water inside it, trucks transporting it around the world, the sun beaming on the trucks. BPA is leaching in. So the ones that you can crack by doing that are very dangerous for you. They have now been banned in countries like the USA, Britain, China, but they've been exported to Australia. We still haven't banned them. We're still using the damn things. So look on the bottle of the bottom. Look at the bottom. You know the little shape that you get in these things? You got a pencil. You got a triangle there? What's in the triangle? What numbers you got? Triangle. Just call out a number. 5. That's the type of plastic being used. It's rated across 8 ratings. 1 to 3 are those ones, perfectly safe for you. 4 to 6, smaller tick. We think they're safe, but they're the ones that the rest of the world is looking at. If it's got a 7 or an 8 in it, throw it in the bin. It's dangerous.
Is 1 right?
1 to 3 are fine. 4 to 6 are average. 7 and 8 are bad for you. Don't drink it.
So you said we shouldn't drink
The plastic is breaking down internally, and the BPA poison is going into the water that you're drinking. Babies' bottles have had to be legislated against. Any other questions about the bottles? Yep. When they make the plastic in 1, 2s and 3s, they don't have any BPA built into the plastic. The BPA makes them brittle, so they'll break down in the sun. So they won't last 300 years. The problem is the BPA goes into the water. And so 1 to 3s in the car, they're fine. Okay, back to this question. 4 billion plastic bags a year. Hands of those who think that A might be the answers to what you can do with those things. We have 4 billion plastic bags a year that we are dealing with. And if you think A, we can tie them together, stretch around the world 24 times is correct, put your hand up. So I'll just do a count here, so we get this right.
I'm going to be tricky. I'm just going to say E.
No.
Okay, A's, put your hand up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you think that B is correct, that there are 429,000 per hour dumped in landfill, put your hand up. 1.
No.
C, that they use enough petroleum to drive a car 11 metres.
Let's hear some true.
1, 2, D. Graham was up twice.
It's A or D.
I won't add up to make sure it adds the number of students in the classroom, but I can tell you you're all wrong.
Is it all of them?
It is all of them. We throw away enough plastic bags to do all of those things with them, and they are being done at the same time. Who goes shopping with their parents? Who goes to Aldi? Can you get plastic bags in Aldi? What about Coles and Woolies? Can you get plastic bags in Coles and Woolies?
There's like 10 cents or 5 cents each bag.
There are communities, mainly towns in Western New South Wales, Western Queensland, Western Victoria, where you cannot find a plastic bag. They have banned them for that very reason. How much food do we waste? Australians.
C.
Last one. But
C is correct. There are organisations that go around and collect food and reuse it appropriately for people, but we dump most of our food out. Which of the 5 things listed use the most energy in a school? I've already told you one. Which one uses the most? B.
Yes.
Followed by C. Let me explain why it's not C everywhere. Because very few schools east of here have air conditioning. They don't need it. If they're on the coast, they don't need air conditioning. It doesn't get as hot on the coast as it does at Fairfield. Lighting is a big one. True or false?
No, that's false. True.
It's a trick question. It's neither. Let me display why. Have a look at the light when I turn it on. It flickers. And when it flickers, it's drawing a massive amount of electricity. The new ones in the rooms that you've got new ones in, test them when you go in. Turn them on. They don't flicker. The way you can tell is when you get home and test your home ones, is put your phone onto camera, put the camera up to the lights, and one of you guys come up here and have a look. Describe for them what's coming through the screen.
It's like you can kind of see the rays.
Flickering, a flickering sort of thing going on. What that is called is the refresh rate. What you can't see, not at the moment, what you can't see is that those lights are constantly coming on and going off. Think of it this way. When you look at TV and you see a TV in the background, what's it doing? Flickering. Refreshing itself. They refresh about 200 times a minute, a second. You can't see it. And that refreshing rate is very expensive. So, we've reduced the refresh rate in the new lights. Lost it over. Yeah. Okay. So the lighting that's going around, that's new, has a much faster refresh rate, uses less electricity. The cars using LEDs, much faster, less electricity. The old lights, a lot of electricity. So the answer to that question was, turn them off. So when you're finished in a classroom, and it's the middle of winter and it's cold and it's dark, use the lights. But when you go out, turn them off, because the new lights don't use more electricity by being turned back on. It's pretty simple. Computers. You're using laptops, but not so long ago we were using a desktop machine with a tower and a monitor. Which part of a desktop, keyboard, the tower or the monitor was using most electricity?
Tower.
Hands up. Tower. Hands down. Desk, keyboard. Hands up. Monitor. Correct. Monitor. But what we did, guys, was when we left the classroom, we downed the desk, we downed the tower, and we walked away, because when we downed the tower, what happened to the monitor? It went dark and stayed on 24 hours a day. The thing that uses most electricity stayed on for 24 hours a day. They worked out somewhere that a monitor left on for 3 months would use the equivalent electricity of driving an electric car between Sydney and Perth and back. Wow. So the monitor on your TV screen, on your screens, is using a lot of power. And when I said to Sir before, do they last all day? The first thing he said was when they turn down the brightness. When you down the monitor's brightness, you are saving a lot of electricity. The monitor becomes warm, correct?
Yeah.
What was that stand-up thing I talked to you about before? Heat is the enemy. Anything producing heat is costing you money and power. So therefore, when you finish with your computers, turn them off properly. And these days with computers at schools, mainly primary schools, where we've still got the old towers, we turn them off at the wall. That's the only way to make sure. The other thing, of course, was attached was a printer, which sat there for 99 hours out of every 100, doing nothing but was powered up, pulling electricity out of the wall. So we turn everything off at the wall. Okay, got something for you. You need to be able to count on your fingers. Oh, before we do, I missed the question. How much is the secondary school student cost to school in electricity a year?
60.
60. 60. Do you want to know how much it costs the school? $60 each.
Nice to meet you, sir. Nice to meet you, sir. Nice to meet you, sir.
Okay, you don't need your computers for this, you need your fingers. Yep, I'll drop it, sir.
Sorry, I feel about to leave for another bus.
What I'm going to give you a chance to do is work out your ecological footprint.
Come on, guys.
You don't need your computers, don't need anything, you just need to be able to count. Let me explain. There are 7 billion people in the world at the moment. By 2050 there will be 10 billion of us. Somehow the planet has to feed those people. And the average area of the planet that we use to produce food is 23% of the whole planet, which includes oceans. So what we work out is ecologically, how much area does each one of you need to produce enough food to survive? Now by asking a few questions and you scoring yourself 1, 2 or 3 and keeping a count of your scores, I can tell you at the end where you go with this, okay? I'll lead you through the first one. How much area do you need to survive for the rest of your life? First question is, at the top, how often do you eat meat? If it's never, score yourself a 1. If it's twice, 1 to 4 times a week, give yourself a 2. If it's every day, give yourself a 3, and keep it to yourself. We're looking at this ecological conversion through a number of headings. Food, transport, power, and then another 2 after that. So food first. Hands of those who reckon you're a 2 for a meat eater. Okay, hands down. Now this is where you've got to keep count. Do you waste a lot of food? If you never waste food, rarely, give yourself a 1 and add it to the score so far. You've got to keep the score cumulative, you've got to add. Sometimes 2, every day 3. So you're now either a 6, a 5, a 4, a 3, or a 2. Keep going. Where does most of your food come from? Homegrown and locally, in supermarkets but grown in Australia, or supermarkets from overseas? 1, 2 or 3. If you're lucky, most of you are sitting in the Fairfield because it's a really well-known area for grown food. Transport. Where do you go for holidays? If you go overseas, give yourself a 3. If you go somewhere in Australia, 2. If it's locally, 1. Keep your score going. How do you get to school each day? 1, 2 or 3. Which type of car does your family have? 1, 2 or 3. Power and energy. Does your house have, if it has some solar, 1, some gas power, 2, only electricity, 3. At the moment, over 150,000 homes in New South Wales have solar power on them. Do you try to save energy? A lot, a little, or none? 1, 2 or 3. Next 2 slides. Water. Question 1, do you save water? You intentionally try to save water? 1, 2 or 3. And do you drink bottled water? By that I mean, do you buy the bottle constantly, not just refresh the old bottle? 1, 2 or 3. Waste. Do you try to recycle? 1, 2 or 3. Keep adding your score up. And lastly, do you pack your own lunch in reusable containers without plastic, without Glad wrap, but just in a plastic container that you use every single day? 1, 2 or 3. They're very big in primary schools. Okay, you've got a score now out of total. Don't call it out because you might be a bit embarrassed. Relate your scores to that.
Yeah. Average. Yeah.
Average.
people that are high. I certainly was the first time I did it. Average. And the people that are low. Now for the really good news. The ratings at the end say, for low, you need 2.5 hectares, that's 5 football fields, to survive for the rest of your life. Each one of you. If your average here, 4 to 6 hectares, it's 12 football fields. And us high people have gone long gone. We're long gone. When you work out 7 billion people divided by 23% of the Earth's surface, in fact, it's an average of 1.8 hectares per person. So for you people that are really low and going to use 2.5, somebody your equivalent in India, possibly, or the poorer countries, have got to use significantly less to average at 1.8. Even at the low scale, you are going to cost somebody in a poorer country some of the farming area to feed themselves.
If you're 26, are you average or high?
26? 26 or more? Aye, you won my month.
26 or average as well.
Yeah, I should have changed it. 26 or more is high. Point is, the average is 1.8 for the world. If we all use 1.8, the 7 billion of us can survive. Now, yes, people in India, certainly poor areas, Pakistan areas, are using about 0.8 or 0.6. But the countries like ourselves, we're often using between 12 and more football fields. So we have to do a little bit of work because by 2050 there will be 10 billion of us to survive. So it's something I'll leave you with a little bit of a thought on that one. And some homework for you for Thursday. I'm going to come back Thursday and I'm going to put this world perspective on what you're talking about here. Give you some ideas of what's happening in the world. I want you to think about answering these questions. You might want to write them down. If you can remember them, that's fine. What does sustainability mean?
So my God. For my class,
What does sustainability mean? What are the implications for Pat's Fairfield, for Australia and for the world? And lastly, what future careers are around? Because there are careers where I know for a fact my neighbour's son is in a career of environmental engineering and he's earning $450,000 a year just out of university. He's earning a packet. So a little bit of homework for Thursday morning. I'm going to come in, we're going to do the full presentation now. See you guys.